Welcome to this edition of Out of Bounds. I'm John Luck. This is Mary Evers. We're here for part 4 of our State of the Team series, and did we save the best for last. We're recapping the Boston Red Sox from the start of 2019 through now, and, well, we only have a certain amount of time, so we'll just kind of give you the Cliff Notes version.
Oh, sure, yep.
Defending World Series champions fell on their face to start the season, could never rebound. Chris Sale ended up getting hurt, missing half the season. David Price also missed half the season as well. Mookie Betts got traded to Los Angeles along with David Price. They got a prospect back. That didn't work out, so they now have Alex Verdugo. He's not starting. And, oh yeah, they don't have a manager.
Well, they do have a manager.
They have an interim manager. My apologies.
Can you guys tell that John is not a fan of the Boston Red Sox?
I'm just giving you.
Like he
I'm giving you the unbiased recap of what happened.
You had a tone to your voice. It seemed pretty biased. And also, they had Alex Verdugo in the original trade, plus the pitcher from Minnesota. Apparently, he failed his physical. The Dodgers are going to keep him themselves, and the Dodgers sent over 2 other players, including a shortstop named Jeter, which I'm still conflicted about personally.
All right, so let's kind of take this piece by piece here. Let's talk about 2019, coming off of the World Series title in 2018.
Yeah.
But the season just could never get off on the right step for the Red Sox. They had that West Coast road trip. They went 1-5, I believe, 2-7, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So that was not really a good way to start the season off.
No, I don't know if it was because they had a long season before and none of them took advantage of their break, or if they just had an off, like apparently every player had an off year, which is possible considering basically every player had a great season in 2018. So it's realistic to think that they all just kind of had an off year last year, but who knows? Maybe it had to do something with the whole replay and the sign stealing thing. Maybe they stopped doing that in 2019 and that's why they weren't doing as well, though reports are saying now that they didn't do as much as the Astros did to cheat, but who knows?
Does that mean they're going to give that apology press conference like the Astros?
I swear to God, that was the worst apology. Like, I feel like a man cheating on his girlfriend had a better apology than Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman. I don't like Alex Bregman at all. I think he's kind of a jerk, and he's just really full of himself. So I was expecting that from him. I'm disappointed in Jose Altuve. I liked him. I thought he was a good guy, but he clearly doesn't give any care about this situation at all.
Nice save there.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so for me, it kind of goes back to what you're saying. It was a long 2018. There were a lot of games played. And there's a reason you don't see a lot of teams repeating. I don't think we've had a repeating World Series champion since, the New York Yankees, late 90s, 2000?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's kind of one of the better things about baseball is that you're not, you don't have something like the Golden State Warriors where they're just, consistently in the playoff or the finals for years and they win 3 out of 5.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But you don't see that in MLB, which is nice because you're different teams every year have a chance to win. Like the Dodgers have a chance to win every year, but they just squander it away.
Against cheaters, but.
Right, yeah, but who's to say if that actually really affects them? Who did they lose to in the playoffs this year? The Nationals?
Just the World Series champions.
But were they cheating? We don't know. Apparently, Alex Cora called them to let them know the Astros were cheating, so who knows?
Listen, guys, they're going to pull the same thing with you. I know what's going on here.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But Chris Sale, before the season started last year, signed that long-term contract extension, and to me, that was not a good idea on Dave Dombrowski's part. I understand he's the guy in Dave Dombrowski that plans for the now and worries about later on. But when you talk about Chris Sale, a guy who is physically fragile like he is, to go ahead and give him a 5-year, $175 million contract like he got, or something like that, that kind of gives Chris Sale now the safety net to maybe not go out there and push himself as much.
Right.
This Red Sox pitching staff in 2019, it did have its bright spots with Eduardo Rodriguez going 19-6, having career best ERAs, most innings pitched, most wins. So that's a bright spot. But Chris Sale, it's fair to say, I think, that 2019 was a relative choke job for the Sox ace.
And not only just him, but I think it's fair to say that Dave Dombrowski overspent on especially pitching. Chris Sale's contract and then David Price's contract, and even Nathan Eovaldi, who we knew, because he's had 2 Tommy John surgeries at this point, that he was very injury prone. So they gave him a contract, which I get it. He did that whole, he pitched 9 innings of relief and extra innings, and that's great. And I definitely think he should have gotten a contract, but maybe not to the extent that they gave him one. And then, of course, your lowest paid pitcher is actually your best pitcher, who they just beat out in arbitration this year, even though he's going to be your best pitcher again this year.
By $600,000.
$600,000. Like, how is that even? I don't maybe it's just because of the new guy in charge, Mr. Bloom there. Maybe he's just like, I'm not spending money on any of you.
Well, we'll get to Chaim Bloom in just a little bit, but sticking with 2019 for the moment, the bullpen was certainly a focal point coming into last season. Obviously, they didn't have Craig Kimbrell. He went off to the Chicago Cubs midway through the season. So the Red Sox in 2019 basically had a closer by committee. They started the season off, I think, with Ryan Brazier as the closer, but then they went to a couple other guys, and then they said, you know what, we're just going to see what happens. The arms in the bullpen were not good last year. It was a comedy act in the 8th and 9th inning, and it was kind of like, how are the Red Sox going to screw this up this time?
Oh, yeah.
And that can't be how it goes when you have a yearly salary cap of what, $208 million. That can't happen.
And I think clearly it didn't work. I'm not a huge fan of the pitching by committee thing in general, whether it's at the beginning of the game or the end of the game. I feel like everyone should have a set spot in the lineup. You're coming in the 7th or 8th inning. You're coming in the 9th inning to close. That's kind of been a staple for baseball forever, and I've never been a fan of them changing that. So I think that they need to be able to tell these people in the bullpen, because there's not really much of a difference in their bullpen than there was in last year, but they need to assign people in a specific spot. Like Matt Barnes should be your 8th inning guy, and apparently, according to Ron Renneke, Brandon Workman will be the closer this year. And I don't know how well Brandon Workman is going to do as a closer, but I think it'll help at least a little bit that they'll all know exactly what their place on the team is.
A little more stability, which maybe actually needed given what happened this offseason. So let's get to it now. The offseason for the Boston Red Sox, they didn't qualify for the playoffs in 2019. So Dave Dombrowski gets fired. They hire Chaim Bloom, and this was a very polarizing person here as far as the Red Sox fans are concerned, because he went ahead and traded 2 of their top salaries or top contracts to Los Angeles, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But he's kind of been slicing and dicing the salary cap for the Red Sox, and now it's kind of just up in flux.
Which, I mean, I think that's why they hired him in the first place, because he was part of a front office in Tampa Bay that was able to have one of the lowest salaries in baseball but still make the playoffs, which is clearly probably one of the most attractive points to the Red Sox when they thought about hiring him. And that's fine. And he clearly came in and was like, I get that you guys all love these players, but we got to do what we got to do. And he's just doing his job. Now, do I blame him for the whole Mookie Betts, David Price trade? No, because he did not create that situation, and he definitely needed to get under the cap. But I also don't think that he's making fantastic decisions. Like, he hasn't done anything, in my opinion, to make it seem like, oh yeah, this is definitely the right guy for the Red Sox.
So when it comes to the David Price, Mookie Betts situation, financially that was something that had to be done. When you talk about David Price, he was going to be a 10-5 guy, 10 years of Major League service and 5 years with the same team. What that means is at the end of the season, if Price was on the Red Sox, he could veto any trade the Red Sox would include him in. So obviously if you're trying to do some cost conserving in the future, you want to get rid of a guy like David Price who's getting older and hurt. So the only way the Dodgers were going to take David Price is if you include a guy like Mookie Betts. And honestly, nowadays, Chaim Bloom got the best he could get for a guy like Mookie Betts. In the last year of his contract, he's made it known publicly and loud and proud that he's going to be a free agent. He's not going to go ahead and re-sign with the team. So, if I'm the Dodgers, why am I going to go ahead and give up so much for this guy that's going to potentially be somewhere else next season.
Right, and I think that's fair. And I don't think that Mookie Betts is going to, at some point halfway through the season, sign a contract with the Dodgers. One, because I don't know where the Dodgers stand financially. I know that they are one of the top teams that are going over the salary cap. So with the amount of people that they have, the amount of star power that they have on their team, I don't know if they're even going to be able to financially swing signing a Mookie Betts and also making sure Cody Bellinger is staying there and all your pitchers, and because they now have 3 of the top pitchers in Major League Baseball now. So they're going to have a lot to deal with probably next offseason. But the Dodgers are also that team that are continuously almost getting there. And maybe Mookie Betts will be the fix to all of that, but who knows? But I also hardcore believe that Mookie Betts is going to make sure that next offseason he's talking to as many teams as possible, because he's going to want a Mike Trout-like contract. There's no denying that.
And history's shown that typically the Mike Trout, Bryce Harper type of contract doesn't work well for
winning
that
teams.
team that signs them. You look at the Angels; they haven't made the playoffs since they signed Mike Trout to a $500 million contract or whatever it is. Bryce Harper, he went away from the Nationals. What happens? They win the World Series.
Right.
He goes to the Phillies. They don't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
There's a reason that those players don't make the playoffs, make World Series. It's because just about half the payroll is going to said player, and that's a big concern. And I think that's something that could be brought up the next time the CBA comes around, because they're talking about salary caps now for certain positions.
And I think that that's like another thing that you can bring up, like with the movement and different teams that are in the playoffs, the difference between the MLB and the other, not really the NHL, but the NFL and the NBA. Like the NBA will go out and spend $30 million a year on whoever, and they'll win a championship the next year. That doesn't happen in baseball. The only team that I feel like would be able to pull that off is maybe the Yankees, because the Yankees have kind of always historically had the best guy, and then they won the World Series. And I think they signed Garrett Cole over this offseason, and that might actually be a really good piece for them moving forward. But it also might end up being they come in second to the Rays in the AL East. You really don't know, because the MLB is really unpredictable in that way.
All right, so Mookie Betts last season had a .295 average, 29 home runs, 80 runs batted in. David Price last year, 7-5 with a 4.28 ERA, 107 innings pitched, and 32 walks to go along with 128 strikeouts. So what do the Red Sox lose by not having Mookie Betts and David Price at Fenway Park on opening day?
I think they lose a lot of the star power that are bringing fans to Fenway Park. The Red Sox are not going to be able to charge crazy amounts of money this season for tickets, because their stars are not on the team anymore. Like I guess Chris Sale will still probably draw a crowd.
JD Martinez might draw a couple people.
Martinez might, but I don't think that he does not have the same star power as Mookie Betts did. And Xander Bogaerts is probably the guy that you're going to build your team around at this point, which makes sense because he's, just signed a bigger contract this past offseason. But Xander Bogaerts is also not he's a really good player, but he's not one of those standout players that people are thinking of at the top of the league. I mean, he didn't even make the All-Star game on his own this year. He had to go in as a replacement. So without kind of anyone to be the focal point of your team, we haven't seen that, and I don't even know how long. Because before this team, they had David Ortiz and they had Pedro Martinez and they had these big names that drew a crowd, but I don't think they have that anymore.
So just to get back to the finances for a second, when you think about when you talk about money in baseball, you can offset some of the taxes. So this was one of the things I saw. The Red Sox technically are still paying Dustin Pedroia, Pablo Sandoval, Manny Ramirez. So there's some dead money that the Red Sox have to
Castillo.
Right. They still have to flush through some of those funds. But getting back to what this team looks like here, offensively, they should be okay. They have enough offensive firepower that in Fenway Park, they can get runs on the scoreboard. Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, both coming off of career years. JD Martinez, he's always going to continue to give you 35, 40 home runs. Andrew Benintendi, he's going to be that guy that gets it done on the base paths along with Jackie Bradley Jr. It's just not going to be as attractive as a lineup if you don't have Mookie Betts in there. But offensively, if everybody's healthy, then they should be okay.
Right. And I think that one of the big question marks I think I have going into the season is Benintendi, because he did not have a good year last year comparatively to what he had in 2018 especially. And I think that especially Jackie Bradley Jr. does not do very well at the plate. He's just not a great offensive player. He's a fantastic defensive player, but does not do anything at the plate. And now we don't have Mookie in the outfield, and Benintendi's going to probably be your stapled outfield guy now because he can make defensive plays, and hopefully he can go back to being an offensive powerhouse. And I think whether or not he does well is going to mean a lot to this team going forward.
And on the pitching side of things, David Price isn't on the Red Sox anymore, but historically he was god-awful against the Yankees, which for any Red Sox fan, that's partially how you judge a player, is their success against the New York Yankees. I think he had something like a 7.2 ERA or something like that against the Yankees. So even with Price in the starting rotation, this starting rotation was going to struggle. Chris Sale, he's probably going to give you a half a season because his shoulder's going to fall off at some point. He's a Tommy John surgery waiting to happen.
And he's not even at practice or at spring training now because he's pneumonia, which, I mean, I guess you get sick. But
some people get pneumonia and the flu and can't go to work, okay?
It happens around here a lot, John.
Eduardo Rodriguez, as I mentioned earlier, coming off of a career year. Martin Perez is an interesting guy. He could be a guy going for that third or fourth spot in the rotation along with Nathan Eovaldi, who also is dealing with medical issues because Eovaldi has continued to have shoulder problems.
Right.
So even if this starting rotation is healthy, there's a lot more question marks with the pitching than with the hitting.
Right, and I think that was the case last year as well. And they tried to trade for a pitcher. He apparently failed his physical, but he didn't fail enough that the Dodgers were concerned about it.
Verdugo's physical came back perfect.
But he's also injured. I don't understand, how was it the pitcher that got failed in the physical, even though Verdugo was the one that was injured? And I was also slightly surprised that David Price passed his physical, to be quite honest with you. But and I also think
when you hold the cards.
Going back to what you said about how David Price performs against the Yankees, David Price is now in another big market team that's going to have people that are heavily criticizing him when he doesn't do well. I thought, my perspective, I kind of were expecting them to try to trade David Price at some point this season. I thought that he would be better off at a mid-level market team where there was a chance of winning, but your fans were going to crucify you if you didn't win. But I feel like it's going to be worse in Los Angeles because they've gotten so close so many times. And if David Price doesn't deliver for them, they're going to crucify him in the media. They really are.
The pitching staff in Los Angeles should be used to choking in the big stage.
God.
Clayton Kershaw, Kenta Maeda, they've had struggles. So David Price, just another part of the circle in the Los Angeles Dodgers pitching rotation.
Well, was
That's
it because people were sign stealing against them? Yeah, okay.
So obviously a couple big key pieces are gone from this team. And even a couple of important pieces. Brock Holt, a fan favorite, not in the lineup, but that gives you a little bit of versatility when you talk about defensive alignment because he can play everything except pitcher and catcher.
Right.
So with all the moves that Chaim Bloom has made or hasn't made, do you look at the 2020 season almost as an irrelevant season, kind of a chance to rebuild here?
I'm not going to go into the season with high expectations at all. I think that they'll win a decent amount of games. I think they'll still be better than the Orioles because the Orioles are terrible. But I'm not going to sit there and tell people that the Red Sox are going to win a championship this year because I don't think it's likely. But I'm okay with that because I feel like at the end of this year they're going to be able to kind of pull their stuff together a little bit more, and all this cheating stuff and the Alex Cora stuff will be behind them, and they'll be kind of a little bit off of the Mookie Betts drama at that point. And I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't at least attempt to get Mookie Betts back. Whether or not he wants to come back is completely up to him, but I think they'll try to get him back. But so this year I'm going to be kind of just stay calm and kind of let it happen so that we can move on and maybe fix ourselves for the next season.
This is about getting financially stable.
Right.
The Red Sox, with that trade, killed off about $37 million, and they're going to pay part of the price contract. But to me, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as far as some of the other contracts that the Red Sox have and prospects. In my eyes right now, Chaim Bloom is here in Boston to try and rebuild the farm system that Dave Dombrowski sliced and diced to no end.
Right.
So to do that, you're going to have to part with some pieces, and it would be interesting to see what pieces other teams want, be it a Rafael Devers, an Andrew Benintendi, because they're going to get calls on all these guys, even a J.D. Martinez. So it's going to be interesting to see what ownership wants to part with, and what Chaim Bloom wants to part with, and what they can get back. As far as an on-field product, I think you're probably looking at a rebuilding year, not 52 and 110, but somewhere around 75 and 87 if that adds up to 162. But there wasn't a manager up until last week. You don't have a right fielder, really. You don't really have a number 3 starter in the rotation. So there are question marks that have to continue to get worked out.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the big question during this offseason. Alex Cora was rumored to be the mastermind of this whole cheating scandal with the Houston Astros. He got fired by the Red Sox, or a mutual parting of ways by the Red Sox.
Right.
This was a really polarizing move in the clubhouse because there were some players that wanted him to stay.
Right.
But if you're a Red Sox PR person or a member of ownership, it was very difficult to keep Alex Cora here, given everything that he was accused of.
Right. And when it happened, I wasn't surprised. I was expecting them, after what had come out with the Astros report, and they made it seem very much so that they were kind of blaming Alex Cora for all of this, saying that he was the mastermind. However, since then, the narrative has changed a little bit, and more details have come out, and now people are saying that maybe Alex Cora was just a scapegoat because he wasn't on the team anymore. So now it's kind of up in the air as to whether or not this was a good idea, I think, because I think that Alex Cora may have not been the best baseball manager, but he was definitely the best player manager for that team. Those guys loved him and wanted to win for him, and I think that's one of kind of like a key thing. I mean, it's the same thing you kind of saw in Kansas City. Like the Chiefs wanted to win for Andy Reid, and I think that's what happened with the 2018 Red Sox. So I think that if it's true that Alex Cora was just used as a scapegoat, and if the Red Sox report comes back and said that it was a little blown out of proportion and they didn't do as much wrong as people originally thought they did, and that the real reason they're only really looking into them is because they're a 2-time offender, which the first time Alex Cora was not involved in, I would not be surprised, especially because they named Ron Renneke the interim manager, if Alex Cora comes back at some point in the next couple of years.
I don't know if I said it on Out of Bounds or not, or off camera, but I think the Red Sox should have held on to Alex Cora and not part with him, because this was still a fluid situation. The report had just come out on the Houston Astros. We're waiting to see what the Red Sox role in this was. And there, of course, are always going to be those people that say, well, he got fired by the Red Sox, so that may help clear their name. The damage was done, no pun intended. Alex Cora, whether he cheated or not, was going to be part of the Red Sox history and the Houston Astros history. Yeah. So to go ahead and continue to blame him, it's going to happen either way.
No, I honestly, I don't think it's fair that he seems to be shouldering all this blame, especially with kind of the way the Astros are dealing with this now, because it seems like they don't care. Like, they got their issue. They think that firing A.J. Hinch and their GM was going to be the end of all of it, and they don't seem like they want to be held accountable. Their owner yesterday said that he doesn't think that it affected the game, but I feel like if it didn't affect the game, why were you doing it?
And then 66 seconds later, he said, "Oh, I didn't say that."
Right, but he's on camera. Like, this is, people nowadays don't realize, like, everything you say is public information at this point.
He may have been on camera. I think he was on something else too. If you forget something,
God.
66 seconds later.
So Alex Cora himself has been very quiet. He posted a couple days ago to thank Mookie and David Price for their contributions to the Red Sox while he was a manager. He was cheering for the Celtics last night on Twitter. He doesn't seem like he's left kind of the Boston sports arena yet. So I'm really interested to not only kind of hear from him as his own person and away from what John Henry probably told him he needed to say, and kind of see how he feels about the whole situation. But I don't think we'll get that for another couple of months or so.
It's going to be nice. In a couple of weeks, we're actually going to start talking about games being played, and we'll complain about the pitching and the hitting then.
Yeah.
But this has been one of the most tumultuous off seasons in Red Sox history.
However, it has made us forget about the fact that Tom Brady might leave for a little while.
Well, thank you for bringing that up.
Yep.
So that's it for the state of the teams.
Hashtag
we talked
garden season.
We talked about the good with the Celtics and the Bruins, the bad with the Patriots and the Red Sox. So we'll come back next time and talk more about some of the current stuff going on in New England sports. For Mary Evers, I'm John Luck. Thanks for watching.